right, today we are going to be talking about the middle colonies. And before we do that, though, let's just do a quick review over some of the New England colonies. What were some of the New England colonies? What were some? Anybody remember? What was the first one? You can use your notes.
Wasn't it Jamestown?
Jamestown wasn't part of the New England colonies. So Jamestown was the first, though, so that part is correct. And you can use your notes. Anybody remember the first New England one? Bless you. I think we were talking about Pilgrims, right? We had Plymouth. What were some others?
Massachusetts.
Good, Massachusetts. I think we talked about Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire also, right? So these were part of the New England colonies. Massachusetts, remember we said, was called Massachusetts Bay Colony. Plymouth would eventually be absorbed into that one, right? Rhode Island, Connecticut get established because of dissidents, right, within the Puritan community. We said that actually helped colonize because what happened was when there was a disagreement there, what happened? People just left and they started a new colony, right? So anyway, all right, so moving on back over here, the middle colonies. When we talk about the middle colonies, the ones that we're going to be talking about will be New York. We're going to talk about Pennsylvania. We're going to talk a little bit about Delaware. And we're going to talk about Maryland as well today. All right, so New York. Let's talk about New York first. New York is first settled by and claimed by the Dutch. And so how does it become English then? Well, as many times happens in history, they go to war with each other, and basically what's going to end up happening is that the English are going to send a fleet to what was called New Amsterdam at first. When it was Dutch, it wasn't New York, it was New Amsterdam. So they send a fleet, and you have a Dutch governor who was trying to, his name was Stuyvesant, Peter Stuyvesant, and he's going to try and encourage the Dutch people to resist and to fight off the English. And the Dutch people are like, yeah, we don't really want to do that. We're not going to fight to the death for keeping New Amsterdam Dutch. We don't really care who's in charge as long as we get to do our kind of thing. Now that's a little bit of an exaggeration probably, but the bottom line is, was there a big battle for New York? No, there was not. And basically what ends up happening is that the English are able to just basically walk in and take New Amsterdam and then rename it New York. So New Amsterdam becomes New York. Now, why is New York important? A couple of reasons. First, it's the harbor. The city of New York is ideally situated to be a port and to have a harbor. It's also located at the mouth of what's called the Hudson River. The Hudson River was a river that flowed from north to south and was an important transportation route for early farmers and early settlers to get their goods to a market to then be shipped out overseas. So why is New York going to be such an important place? Because of it's going to be a huge port. Does that make sense? as a result, as you can guess, it's going to be the point of entry also for many people that are going to be coming into the colonies, and then even later on when it's the United States, it's going to be the port of entry for many people who are moving or coming into the United States, or earlier the colonies. Does that make sense? So because of that, New York is also going to be very, what we're going to say is very cosmopolitan. There we go. Meaning there's going to be a lot of people from all over the place that are going to come and live in New York. So Dutch were already there, English will be there, right? And eventually other groups will come in too. Irish, for example, and then other groups. As the history goes beyond the colonies and into the history of the United States, we'll have a lot of other groups. If you've been to New York, you know that even to this day, is New York a very diverse place? A lot of different people there, right? So anyway, so to this day, a very cosmopolitan city. So this is important for commercial reasons. So New York is important for very much commercial reasons. We're going to talk about a couple others of these middle colonies that are going to become important for more religious reasons, also commercial reasons too, but anyway, that's a little bit about New York. Any questions on New York? Okay, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is started when a charter is given to William Penn. He was from a religious group that was called the Quakers. The Quakers were not very well received by the Church of England. They were not considered to be a part of the church, and as a result did experience some persecution. The Quakers, however, were very peaceful as a group. They did not believe in fighting back. They took the command in the Bible where it says turn the other cheek. They took it very literally, meaning like if you got slapped, they would literally turn the other cheek and say, go ahead and slap at me again. Like very peaceful. They did not believe in war at all. And so they were what we would say is a pacifist group. Does that make sense? They were pacifists. And so, because of that fact, Pennsylvania will be open to religious toleration, so you're going to have large groups of Germans are going to end up, Lutherans, Mennonites, are going to settle in Pennsylvania. And they're also, as a result, going to have a better relationship with Native American groups as well. Okay, principal city in Pennsylvania is going to be Philadelphia. It's the principal city in Pennsylvania, the capital. All right, Delaware, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on Delaware. Delaware. That's where you get that name. It's going to be gives a charter. Of course, today Delaware is a rather small state. It would rely, I think, primarily on. I think it is going to be a slave state. Let me get back to you a little bit on Delaware, though. But Lord Delaware gets the charter, and is going to establish Delaware. Honestly, there's not a whole lot I'm probably going to ask you as far as what's going to happen with Delaware. So we'll skip that a little bit and move on here to Maryland and kind of focus on that. Now, there's going to be a guy that you need to know by the name of Lord, I believe his name is Cecilius Calvert. He was a Catholic. He's going to receive a charter and establishes Maryland as a safe haven for Catholics. Now remember, what we talked about a little bit last week and a couple weeks ago is what was going on in England. England had established under Henry VIII itself as there was a new church, right? The Church of England. And so as a result of that change, over time, Catholics were becoming persecuted in England. And so people who still wanted to maintain and practice Catholicism this was going to be a safe place for them. That's what a haven means. Does that make sense? What a haven is? All right, so that's what that means. Establishes Maryland as a safe place for Catholics to go and worship. Very important document. There's been a few documents I've told you you need to remember. The Mayflower Compact, the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. This is going to become another one. This is going to be the Toleration Act. And I believe it's 1649. The Toleration Act of 1649, which gives as the first example of a document that's going to grant religious freedom to Christians. Now, I should say just to Christians. You had to be a part of a Christian group still. But the first document of religious freedom in the colonies. All right, now, interesting thing is going to happen, though, in Maryland is because of the fact that they have so much tolerance for some of these other groups, more people are going to come into Maryland and they're going to outnumber the Catholics actually pretty quickly, and they're going to change some of that later. But anyway, but it's still important because, again, this is the first example of, like we said, religious toleration, and not just saying we're going to be tolerant, but a law that says we're going to practice this. Does that make sense? So first law that protects religious freedom. Questions on anything related to the middle colonies as far as an overview? Okay, then economics. Let's go over here. There were a couple different ways that people in the middle colonies tended to make their money. One was through trade and commerce, of course. This is going to especially be true in the two major cities found in the middle colonies of New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. All right, so that's important. In New York, also to a certain extent in Pennsylvania, you're going to see farms that provide like staple crops. What's the difference between a staple crop and a cash crop? Do you usually eat a cash crop? Not usually, right? Cash crop is meant to be like sold and made into something else, like tobacco. When we talk about the southern colonies, we're going to talk about tobacco here in a little bit. Tobacco would be an example of a cash crop. Staple crop would be, what about wheat? Would wheat be, or rye, or barley? Do you understand the difference? So, one of the things that's going to be different about middle colony agriculture, for the most part, and I already mentioned that there's going to be a couple of the middle colonies that do have slaves. Maryland will be one, Delaware will be another. But as you can guess, you think Pennsylvania, based on what we said? about how it was started? Do you think Pennsylvania is going to have slavery? No, they will not. And so, but New York, Pennsylvania is going to have they're more like family farms than large plantation style agriculture. The plantation style agriculture that we see throughout much of the South will exist in some places in the middle colonies, but in New York and Pennsylvania, we're looking at typically large family farms that grow staple crops. Make sense? Okay. There was some slavery, like we just mentioned. And those were in the two, in Delaware and Maryland were the two areas that did practice slavery in the middle colonies. All right, that's pretty much what I wanted to get through as far as the notes today. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to kill the camera.